Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Chase, the speaker of today's topic. So a little bit of introduction. I'm a clinical psychologist and also a digital coach from Naluri. So today my topic of discussion will be strategies to improve or to boost productivity, right? Especially during this time, right? So on to the next slide. So for today's topic, we'll be covering what is the productivity level happening in Malaysia. Right? And the next part is what affects productivity in general. And the last part of today is how to improve productivity. So I would like you guys to take a step back and think of this question, right? Have you ever felt that you sat on a chair from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. working and working, but yet it did not seem like you've done anything productive? Or at least at the end of the day, the end product is not what you really expected after working 8 hours a day, right? So I personally have experiences like this, especially as I've started working from home, right? So now let's have a look, right, at how Malaysians are doing when it comes to productivity in recent years. So looking at this graph here, understandably, you can see on 2020, that's when COVID-19 and the national lockdown hit us. It hit us pretty hard, right? The productivity reduces to negative 5.4%. So I'm not going to bother you with the whole statistics of which sectors are more productive than the other, yada, yada, yada. But I would like to highlight that despite a steep drop in productivity in 2020, what we can see here that since 2018, Malaysia has already been suffering from lack of productivity growth, right? As you can see, there's like started off 3.8, then reduces 2.3, then 2.1, right? So not only that, right? In 2021, we would expect that there may be an increase of productivity after 9 months of handling the lockdown, handling COVID-19. Sadly, there's actually still a decline of 0.4% in quarter 1, 2021, compared to quarter 4 of 2020. So the question is, what is going on here, right? But one thing that I can share for our fellow Malaysian is, seems like everyone is suffering the same fate, right? You are not alone. So, in order to understand what's going on, we will now have to look into the why is our productivity getting low. So what are the factors that's been affecting us when it comes to productivity, right? So I've prepared here 3 main factors: the social, biological, as well as psychological. So I'll be starting off with social factors, right? So as we know in Malaysia that there's right now currently we're still on the lockdown. There's lack of social events, and we were not required to go out. Yada yada yada. However, I would like to share that research has shown that with the social distancing restrictions and all, right, this has actually led us to feel socially isolated, and that's when the loneliness comes in. That really affects us greatly. Why does it affect us greatly? Because we are humans, and as humans, we are actually social beings, right? And in nature or instinctively, we need to socialize, right? We were required to socialize with people in order to feel connected to one another. So, naturally, when loneliness hit us, as humans, we will feel sad and down because of it. And when we're down, naturally, that's when we don't really feel like doing anything productive anymore, right? So the next part of it is the biological part. So here I wrote COVID-19 and immune system. So I think it's pretty obvious that when COVID-19, if we were to have COVID-19, that's when our immune system becomes weaker, and or even in general, when we're sick, who would want to work when we're sick, right? So that's when the productivity decreases when we're sick. But I would like to highlight here that I've written there is age, right? As I noticed this when COVID started, I noticed that I realized that time flies in a blink of an eye. That's when I started to think that what is there anything to do with aging as well as productivity, right? That's when I found out that there's a mixed findings between aging and productivity, right? So there's this mixed finding whether aging helps with productivity or aging makes productivity lower, right? And the reason there's this mixed finding is because there are a lot of nature of different kind of job and also other environmental factors. So it's important to know that we need to know how to use age properly. So for example, age can be a great weapon for productivity because as we grow older, we are more experienced in the work that we've been doing, right? As we work longer and longer, that's when we are getting more and more used to the work nature, and that's when the productivity increase. But if age is not used properly, it can be like a double-edged sword, meaning that the older we get and we don't really use our mind optimally, that's when our mind will get weaker. And as age goes by, as that's when our body as well becomes weaker, right? So that's when it leads to productivity decreases. So now, last but not least, which is the psychological factors of things, right? And there has been extensive research that shows stress plays a big part in our productivity, as well as since COVID-19, there's this new kind of norm which contributes to a stress and also fears and worries within us, right? But I just would like to share that if an optimal stress occurs, that's when it can help us, right? So with the right amount of stress, it can motivate us to do something. So just like a deadline, when we're given a deadline, that's when this adrenaline rush occurs and we feel like more motivated to do something. But when the stress stays with us for too long, that's when what we call chronic stress, that's when our mind and body starts to get tired and feels like shutting down. That's when our productivity decreases sharply. So I know that what I shared with these factors may not be new to you, but nevertheless, I want all the listeners today to know that all of us do go through this at certain time of our lives, right? And I believe that everyone here has gone through COVID-19 together, that in this time of uncertainty, the social distancing, the aging, the worries, right? So I would like you guys to know that we are in this together, right? So now moving on to the part where everyone is here for, right? So what are the strategies can help us with our productivity? So I would like to just share, right? I know there are a lot of strategies out there, like from just a Google search away. So I would like to share that those strategies that I came out with or compiled are based on Herzberg's two-factor theory, or also known as motivation-hygiene theory. The reason that I chose this theory is research has shown that companies that apply this theory in increasing productivity have been successful. So if you guys are interested, I can definitely share the materials or more information about the theory later on. But I'm just going to give you a summarize of what the theory is. So basically what the theory says is that there are two factors to help productivity. One is productivity lies within intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation means the act of doing something without external reward, right? Such as you enjoy the achievements when you're productive doing that thing, right? Or you enjoy the sense of fulfillment in you, right? So the second factor is related to productivity is the surrounding factors, the environment, such as the relationships in the office or even monetary value such as salary. So to simplify this theory, so I've come up with the easy way, an acronym for us to remember. So here I've chosen MCO. So just a little bit of background. MCO in Malaysia is known as Movement Control Order, which nationally known as the national lockdown, right? So currently we are still in the MCO, which is Movement Control Order. But I would like Malaysians to not focus on this, but to focus on the other side of things, which is motivation, communication, and outside of work. These three things, MCO, which I will explain later how does these three things helps with our productivity. So motivation, right? So here I'll start off intrinsic motivation. Right? So if you guys have a pen or pencil, you guys can write this question somewhere beside you and answer them later on. So I would like you guys to take a step back and think, what's the reason behind you wanting to improve your productivity? right? Why am I doing this? Is it because that you would like to learn, like personal development, or is it because of recognition, or even it can be also for family, meaning that I would like to spend more time with my family, so I would like to be more productive, right? So why do I want you guys to write it down? The purpose here is it's important for us to understand why we're doing what we're doing, right? So for example, if one day we feel, because there are some of the days that we might feel lazy and not feel like doing anything. So one of the ways is when you have that paper beside you, that paper of intrinsic motivation paper, we can take it up. We can bring it in front of you and have a read at it to remind yourself, why do you need to push to start working, or instead of just resting on the bed or even on the sofa, right? So moving on to the next tip of motivation, which is I've came out with a few tips to improve motivation. So the first one is creating time block. So as you can see on the right side, there's this guy there. I guess maybe some of you guys know him. So basically, he is Stephen Barlett. He's a 27-year-old CEO of a startup company. So basically, I've heard his podcast and I try out the techniques that he shared. So if you guys are interested, you guys can just look him up on the Google. There's YouTube's and also Spotify of his podcast. So basically, what he shares is time block, right? Create a personal time block. So time block means that you make a personal. So basically, you block off your time personally in your calendar. So the time is blocked so that you can do a certain activity that you need to do during that time, right? So for example, you can block off 2 to 3 working on task A, 4 to 5 working on task B. And the reason I like time block is because I personally have a lot of things ongoing in my daily to-do list, right? So if for people that haven't tried to-do list, please go ahead. That's one of the way to improve productivity as well, to-do list. But to bring it to the next level is take the to-do list you have and put it inside your calendar with certain time given. So I know that I have that time to do this, and the next hour I'll be doing another thing, right? So the next part is how to increase productivity is creating a sense of urgency. Put it simply, if you have 2 weeks to write a report to your supervisor, you will take 2 weeks to finish it, right? But if you're given a time, unlimited time, you will risk forever to get it done. So that's when a deadline introduces. So deadline doesn't mean that a deadline given by others. It can be done personally, a personal deadline, right? So this concept can be easily misunderstood. Creating a sense of urgency, being urgent, does not mean that you're being busier, or you're even stressing yourself, or having more tense in your life. But the key thing here is being urgent means that you're demanding yourself to achieve goal that is important to you. So you know which priorities or which to-do list is important to you. And that's when you create this sense of urgency for you, right? So by doing this, you will naturally distract yourself by non-related matters. Okay, so the last tip of motivation, the M, is creating a conducive environment for your workplace, especially for those who are working from home. It is always difficult to find a space wherever your environment has changed, even sometimes at workplace, right? It takes some time for it to get used to a new workplace. So it is important to take your time to slowly craft a space where you really feel comfortable, with the minimal distraction and with documents on your left, stationery on your right, and a cup of coffee in front of you. So a safe space where you can name as your workstation. So the next part of MCO is the C, which is the communication, right? So I noticed that when there's a loss of communication, that's when the productivity starts to decline, right? Again, I want you guys to ask yourselves this question. Have you come across a group project and you couldn't start to do your part because you're waiting on someone else in the team to update you on their progress? So when that happens, that's when you start asking yourself, how long will it take for me to wait for an answer before I can do that part of my job, right? So before we even have an answer to that, that's when we already found ourselves in deep trouble. So that's when it goes to the point one, which is being assertive, asking what you need, right? So assertive communication here is important. It's important for us to speak out what we think and what we want without offending that person. But then again, it's easier said than done, right? So looking back at my work with my clients, I noticed there's a similar pattern where it is not easy to communicate assertively whenever it's in the workplace or when it comes to higher authority. I personally have struggled this as well, right? So that's when I've come up with a tricks. One of the tricks that I usually personally use to help me to communicate assertively, which is what I call it a hamburger method, right? A hamburger method, as this idea is the meat of the hamburger is the main message, right? So a main message that you want to ask or voice out what you really want. And instead of just having the main message, you need to cover it up nicely. We put over a bun over the patty and close it up with another bun, right? To make it nice. So the bun here is what we know as the polite message. So for example, instead of saying, when can you finish your work? I'm waiting for you to finish your part so I can start mine. That may sound a little bit offensive because it seems like it's pointing fingers to that colleague of yours. So that's when we try to implement this hamburger method. So we start off with a bun first, such as, I understand that you're busy right now and have a lot on your plate, but can I get an estimated time on when will you finish your part? So that's when the meat comes in, right? You ask that person, can I get an estimated time on when will you finish your part so I can arrange my time accordingly, right? That's when we close with another bun. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you. Can you see the difference? Right? So the next part of it, of communication, is reaching out. Right? So this is important as well because, as I shared earlier, the factor of isolation is something that really affects us emotionally as well as leading on to productivity. So I want to highlight to you guys that whenever you need somebody to talk to or wind down from work, do reach out. Right? Remember, especially for Malaysians here, physical distancing does not mean social distancing. You still can socialize with people. Or more importantly is you must continue socialize with people as long as you follow the given standard of procedures, right? The SOPs. So the last part that I would like to introduce today for the productivity is O, at the O of MCO, which is outside from work. So now there has been extensive research that shows that productivity is affected by our health biologically, psychologically, as well as physically. So it is important to get back to the basics. So the first here is nutrition, allowing yourself to have a balanced diet, to indulge in meal that you really like, right? So, and also taking light snack if necessary, if you feel like stress, but as long as it is in moderation, not too much, right? And the next part is physical activity, exercise. So I, for one, tend to feel really demotivated, lazy, or sometimes even unwell if I don't exercise for 2 weeks, right? But when I say exercise, right, I did not mean that you need to have like high intensity workout, carry kettlebells, run like 100 meters. It's not that, right? It doesn't require you to sweat a lot. You can start off that way, right? You can start off with a simple physical regimen first, such as taking a 30 minutes walk every day and slowly building up from that, right? So the next part is self-care. Self-care here is taking care of ourselves so that you can help yourself to regenerate and to prevent burnout, right? Like what I said earlier on, the chronic stress, right, is something that we really want to avoid. As we all know, burnout is known to be counterproductive. And the last thing we want is to keep pushing, and forget to rest our mind and our body. So it can be just taking it. So for example, one trick is to take a short breaks between work, right? The short break can be having a light snack, a cup of coffee, some stretches, or even a short 5 to 10 minute walk. Okay. So this sums up the tricks that I have for you guys, the strategies I have you guys. So thank you all for all still staying here with me. And I hope that my strategies and tips can help you to improve your productivity. So if I were to leave with you one message from today's webinar is to dare to make the change by taking the first step. So I dare you all to pick just one strategy from the MCO, motivation, communication, and outside from work that you guys haven't tried before or first time hearing it, and give it a go, right? Or even, or if you feel, or you are, for the people who already feel motivated, you guys can try more than one, right? If you guys are up for the challenge. So once again, thank you for listening.